Hi, if you're watching this video, I hope you got here after watching another YouTube video that I posted that basically talks about an observation field called interaction, visited flower of, and how to view the data on iNaturalist, right? So this is the name of the video here. I'll include a link to it in the description of this video. I hope you check it out if you haven't already seen it. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is how to add observation fields in general on iNaturalist, specifically focusing on that same field that I mentioned a second ago. So before I do that, I have to repeat, just like I'm going to in all of my videos, that on the app, on the iNaturalist app, it's kind of limited on what you can do. So for example, viewing observation field data or adding observation fields, it's not something you can do from the app. All right. So I just typed in Florida here, and I just wanted to show how many insect observations there are in Florida, just to kind of show how much potential there is, again, for this observation field to accumulate data and help us learn about these flower associations. Okay, 237,000 observations, over 20,000 observers, over 5,000 species so far as of today, September 13th. And, you can scroll through here. A lot of them aren't going to show insects visiting flowers, but, a good proportion of them are. So as I scroll through, I'm sure I'll start seeing some. Okay, so for example, this cloudless sulfur, this buckeye visiting tall elephant's foot. You can see there are plenty of examples, right? So again, keep that number in mind. That I mentioned, 237,000. Now let me show you how many observations so far have this observation field filled out. Okay, so I kind of have this set already in my history where it lets me view the ones that have the observation field added, and you can see after the equal sign, right? And this is, you have to watch the other video to understand how this works. There's no number, so this is just showing any observation that has the observation field added. Okay, so you'll see a bunch of different flower species being visited here. So look at this number, 3,000 observations, right, compared to 237,000. So obviously there are way more than only 3,000 observations. So there's a lot in here on the data that's already posted to iNaturalist, right? And obviously new data is being posted all the time. New observations are being added all the time. So what I'm trying to do is to tell you, if you have observations where you know what plant is being visited, then revisit your observations and add this observation field to help it be part of this data set, right? Where we can kind of group it by flower and see what insects are visiting what flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find a random observation here where I recognize the flower being visited. And I can't stress enough, don't do this unless you recognize the flower being visited. So I'm going to go with this twin spot skipper. So here's the observation. Okay, here's all the data that you see standard on an observation on iNaturalist. And then if you scroll down a little bit, underneath annotations and projects, there's the option there that says observation fields. And here where it says choose a field, that's where I'm going to type in the name of the observation. Okay, so I could type in interaction visited flower of, but really just typing in visited flower of, that way I don't have to do that little funny arrow. It'll pop up here, right? And there are a lot of other options, right? And the reason that I went with interaction visited flower of instead of, let's say, visiting a flower of interaction is because I noticed that this observation field was already kind of more popular on iNaturalist. More people were using it. So make sure, I can't stress enough that you click on the right one and not visiting a flower of or flowers visited or anything like that. It has to be this one here that says interaction visited flower of. Then it gives me the option to type the species. So let me scroll back up to show you what species is being visited here. This is pickerelweed, right? A twin spot skipper visiting pickerelweed. So what I'm going to type here for species name is pickerelweed. Okay. Pontidaria cordata, there it is. Okay, and then you have to click it, right? So I'm going to click on pickerelweed, and then I also have to click on add in order for it to be added to that data set of insects or, anything visiting this flower. Okay, so it's loading. There you go. It's done. And then I'm going to click on where it says interaction visited flower of observations with this field and value. I'm going to open that in a separate tab. And then you'll see that it's part of the data that I added here. Right here it is, twin spot skipper. See, this is all the observations that have that field added, and then this is the observation. So you can see it's now part of that data set. So 52 observations, 26 species so far, and I can scroll through here and see all of that awesome data, just like I showed you in that other video that I mentioned. All right, and that's basically it. I also wanted to explain something about why I chose this observation field instead of, let's say, something like nectar plant. And I actually was using an observation field called nectar plant before, and I could use it, I could apply it here too if I wanted to. I could type in nectar plant, right, and I click it, and there are even two that look exactly the same, so I'm assuming it's going to be this one. And I could put pickerel weed and do the same thing and add it. And there's nothing wrong with it having two observation fields. But the reason I decided to start using this one and focus on this one, interaction visited flower of, instead of nectar plant, is because it's kind of more inclusive. So, you know, I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, in this one, you can be pretty sure that this guy's getting some nectar, right? You see the proboscis out, but there might be some where it's a bee that's just collecting pollen and not necessarily getting nectar. So since this one is more inclusive, it's just showing something visiting a flower. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was there for nectar or to get pollen. And it could even be something like a predator that's hanging out on the flower waiting to ambush a pollinator or something visiting that flower. So that's why I decided to go with this. And I did that also on the advice of a friend of mine, Suzanne, who, you know, kind of pointed out, hey, you're not necessarily sure a lot of the time if it is really getting nectar in that observation. And since I wanted it to just be, you know, hey, this is something visiting a flower. If you hang out at a flower and watch it for a little while, it kind of gives you a better idea of what you might find on that flower, whether or not it's there for nectar. So that's why I decided to go with that observation field. Again, I wouldn't recommend adding it unless you know exactly what the plant is. If you're only able to ID it to like the genus or something like that, I mean, if you know based on the photo that nobody else will be able to identify it further, then I would encourage you to add the observation field. But if you're not sure, if you think somebody else might know better, then maybe it's best not to add the observation field. Another thing is, you know, feel free to @ me. My username is JoeMDO on iNaturalist. You could always @ me and, you know, ask me a question like, hey, do you recognize what plant this is? I might not be able to help. I mean, I probably won't be able to help, especially if it's outside of South Florida. But, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to do this, to @ me. If you want to leave a comment on the video below, I'm going to be trying to add more video tutorials like this. So if you like my videos, feel free to subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions again. And I'll mention a few other observation fields I like a lot. There's one called eating, which can show, you know, whether it's predation or just something eating a berry or eating a plant. That's a really good observation field. There's also eaten by. That's another good observation field I use a lot. And I'll probably make videos showing these. And then another one I use is host plant ID, which would show, let's say, a caterpillar or something visiting. Or not visiting, you know, eating a plant, obviously eating a plant and using it as a host plant. So that's all for now. I hope you like this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you next time.